Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yu-Gi-Oh Everything, and welcome back to another episode of the Talking Yu-Gi-Oh show for the first time from the farms of Delaware. I hope you guys are having a wonderful, wonderful Wednesday. I am very, very excited to get to this show with you guys. The opening topic that I want to go over with you guys, it's a video that I've wanted to make for a very long time. And it's about a Yu-Gi-Oh series that was so unbelievably cursed. I really don't know how they managed to put together a semblance of a decent anime. And of course, that's subjective. I mean, some people think it wasn't good. Some people love it. But like this show, I don't think any other Yu-Gi-Oh series touches this show when it comes to the production issues that it had. And we're going to kind of go from the start and just go over all of the things that absolutely plagued this anime. And I am talking, of course, about Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS. And given everything that happened surrounding Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS, Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS should have been a really, really bad show. Now, I know there's people watching right now that probably feel it was a really, really bad show. I think if you polled the conglomerate of people that have seen every single Yu-Gi-Oh anime, I think VRAINS would be considered slightly favorable. I think if you polled 1,000 Yu-Gi-Oh fans that have watched VRAINS, it would fall somewhere on like a 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10 if you averaged out all of the rankings. There's a lot of people that do not like VRAINS, that think VRAINS is the worst Yu-Gi-Oh anime. I could name a bunch off the top of my head. On the flip side, there's a people who loved Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS and think Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS is the best Yu-Gi-Oh anime. Even looking in our Talking Yu-Gi-Oh group, I liked VRAINS. I didn't love it, but I liked it. Calibro liked it. Pete and Dredger loved it. Nick T didn't like it. I think it's actually Nick T's least favorite Yu-Gi-Oh of the shows he's seen. So even within like our friend group, it's very polarizing with Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS. But this isn't about whether VRAINS is good, bad, okay, decent, mid, horrible, excellent. That's not what this opening segment's about. This opening segment is about how Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS should have been an absolute unwatchable nightmare. It should have been. Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS, we have to go back to the beginning with Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS, and that's when it first gets announced in December of 2016. It gets announced at Jump Festa. We're all excited. Yusaku Fujiki, Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS. And then the first kind of mini red flag got waved. And the first mini red flag was the opening description that we got when it came to Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS. I'm going to read this for you. And I want you guys at home watching to remember like what Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS was, and tell me if you think this was accurate. The Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS theme, remember this is from December when it was first announced, is take a step forward and try. On the premise, kids should try out things instead of giving up at the first try due to being overwhelmed by information. Yusaku is a boy who doesn't like standing out, and particularly doesn't stand out at school. However, he gets drawn into encounters with people as he tries out dueling for once. The main theme of the sixth show is take a step forward and try. The main character, Yusaku, is a young man who extremely dislikes standing out, blah, blah, blah. Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS was nothing like this. In fact, this is an excerpt from one of my videos back in March before VRAINS started, when I realized that, hey, we're kind of getting like totally different descriptions when it comes to Yusaku's character. Here it is.
Seems very cool. There is some contradicting arguments here, though, because Yusaku clearly is already a dueling expert if he's crushed this group single-handedly. But there's other articles that say he's never dueled before. So there's something going on here. Maybe they changed his backstory a little bit.
Yeah, they changed his backstory a little bit. Even back then in March of 2017, before VRAINS aired, when I'm making videos, I'm like, hey, you know, something's not right here. We're getting descriptions that he's never dueled before, and we're also getting descriptions in the very next V-Jump article of he's a dueling expert who's taken down the Knights of Hanoi before. So something was off there. And then we get like the first pretty big announcement when it comes to Vrains. And another red flag, hey, Vrains is going to air in May of 2017, not April, which was a little weird. Instead, we're going to get this Yu-Gi-Oh Labo. For those of you that are old enough, you remember Yu-Gi-Oh Labo. It aired in the place of Vrains. It was really just like a placeholder, and it was them like explaining what the word Vrains meant. It was showing like concept art of Yusaku and Aoi and Go, and it was cool, but it was a 5-week delay. And to this day, it is the only Yu-Gi-Oh series that had any sort of delay at its start. So kind of weird there, right? You're giving a 5-week delay. They don't really explain why, but there's already concerns, right? Your story has changed at the beginning. There's a 5-week delay. There's clearly last minute things that are juggling right now that all indicate some major changes on the forefront. But whatever, let's start the show. So the show starts, and not even, 4 months in, we have our first massive news. A lot of people forget this. 14 episodes in, the Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS director is out. 14 episodes in. And they bring on a guy who has never directed before. Okay, that's a little weird. I mean, you don't love seeing that. That's not necessarily a great sign. By the way, I went back and watched one of those old Link summoning sequences. Remember early on, the Link summonings were unbearable. Guess how long it takes Go to summon Goki the Great Ogre, a Link 3 monster? From start to finish, 51 seconds. Almost a minute for one Link summon. And you would get those like 5 times in an episode. 51 seconds it took Go to summon Goki the Great Ogre. So maybe that's why the director change happened. We don't know if this was a firing. We don't know if Masahiro stepped down. Apparently he stepped down. So, we'll just take that at its word. But either way, not a great sign that the director up and leaves after 14 episodes. And we had a recap in episode 13. Then we had another recap in episode 21. Then we had another recap in episode 29. Then we had another recap in episode 38. So in a 25 episode period, 4 recaps. Now you're starting to worry. And I'm making videos. You can see my thumbnails back in the day. I'm worried at this point. I think everybody is. I think everybody is really, really worried. You have the director change 14 episodes in, which is unprecedented. Never before in a Yu-Gi-Oh anime has the director changed that quickly. We've seen a director or a main writer change before in a Yu-Gi-Oh anime. That's not unheard of. But 14 episodes in, that is unprecedented. That is unprecedented. And so imagine being this new director who's never been a main director of a show before. Recap in episode 21, recap in episode 29, recap in episode 38. And what this young director, I believe he was in like his late 20s, early 30s. So he was like my age. I'm just imagining taking over the director spot for Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS in the studios in that much of turmoil. So this young director decides, all right, listen, I've got to apologize. And he apologizes all 3 times after these recaps. But the most interesting apology was the third one. This was after episode 38. This is the director of Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS. To all the fans who look forward to seeing VRAINS every week, I'm very sorry that you had to see a recap again. It must have been very frustrating for some of you. I don't enjoy seeing recaps in a show that I look forward to every week either. Once again, I'm very sorry about this. Some people will probably think that all my apologies won't improve VRAINS production. That said, I think the state of the show's production will probably improve thanks to these recaps we put out. As I'll probably be reprimanded if I disclose too many details about the show's production, let's just say that we're making progress little by little. I mean, even, just to make a statement like this, I remember I praised it. I was like, man, that's bold. That's really bold. Because you can get in a lot of trouble for doing something like this. You can get in a lot of trouble. And he even says that. He's like, if I go any further, I'm going to get reprimanded. But it did improve. I mean, I think there were only 2 more recaps in the final 80 episodes. So it did improve. But then, of course, you get to the very end of Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS, and the whole show gets cut short by 6 months. So Yu-Gi-Oh VRAINS from the very, very beginning was doomed to be this complete mess of a show. And the fact that I think a majority of people, if you polled again, a large majority of Yu-Gi-Oh watchers, I think the average rating would be like a 6. I think everybody working on the show would take that, given what they went through. This is all the stuff that we, the public, know about. We can look back on the beginning, how it was changed, the 5-week delay not helping production issues at all the recaps. The show was in a complete turmoil state. And the fact that they still managed to put together a watchable show really is unbelievable to me. Now, some people will say, I mean, it wasn't watchable. Some people really don't like it. And, you know, my response to that is, yeah, I mean, that's valid. I mean, the show should have been terrible. I mean, the more you look into it, the show really should have been terrible. And I would have loved to see the original concept, and I would have loved to see what the studio and the team could have done if they were not in such a terrible, terrible situation. All in all, I think knowing what we know and knowing that there were probably so many things behind the scenes that we sadly will never know about. I'm sure behind the scenes stuff, it was much worse than what the public knows. I really do commend them for still being able to put out a watchable show that that many people enjoyed. It really is unbelievable given how bad things were at Studio Gallop at the time. And as we know, it was the final Yu-Gi-Oh that Studio Gallop would ever touch. So I just think it's unbelievable when you really take a deep look into it. I want to bring on two, wonderful friends of mine, Calibro and Nick T. I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, you only can compare it to Sevens and Go Rush, but I feel like the amount of drama that we know of as the audience that happened regarding this show, I think it's unbelievable that they were still able to put together a watchable product.
Yeah. No, I agree. And yeah, Brains was what got me back in. I think the overall concept, right, of the show for me, just like the virtual reality aspect, was something that was interesting. And then obviously the Yu-Gi-Oh allure of itself being like, wow, this is something that I used to be interested in back in the day. I'd love to get back into it. And like you said, there were so many things that I didn't even know were necessarily like not normal in the beginning, like with the recap episodes happening, like one after the other like that. I was like, okay, is this another? And like you kind of explained it to me, and I was like, oh, so this isn't? You're like, no, this doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah,
like,
bad sign.
I was like, because I thought it was weird. I was like, I thought this is weird, but I don't know. Maybe that happens, and so that that was one thing. Like just getting used to honestly watching anime at that time as well. But I still thought it was a good show. Like I really, it could have been so bad. Like it could have, it could have just stopped. Like it could have not gone even as far as it did.
It could have been canceled. Like what we know, it was so bad. Like I really do feel like there was a chance it could have been canceled.
For what they were going through, like you said, 6 out of 10, any day of the week.
I think everybody who worked on that show, if they got the consensus rating of a 6 out of 10 for what they had to deal with and stuff that we, the public, will never know what they had to deal with, I think every single person that worked on that show would be happy. And I really do believe, it's not just good radio I'm trying to do here. I really do mean what I say when I said I've read thousands of comments, thousands of takes on Vrains, people hating it, giving it a 1 out of 10, people loving it, giving it a 10 out of 10. I really think the average rating would fall in that like 6 out of 10 rating, slightly favorable. I mean, there were 26 episodes. The show just ended in September. It didn't go a full 3 years. No Yu-Gi-Oh show has just like ended abruptly with like no follow-up to it. So clearly like those last 6 months, it feels like we're also like kind of annexed out of the series. And that could have certainly helped answer a lot of those unanswered questions that we didn't get. But we have to judge the show based on what it was, of course.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But yes, 100% we do have to judge it based on what we got. But I think we can at least explain what we didn't get by those, with those issues. Like, not even just plot points. I mean, literal production issues in that last, 10% of the show, having, what's his name, die off screen. No,
Spectre,
yeah. Yeah,
That was another thing. And then Spectre's voice actor came out on Twitter and is like, yeah, I love the character. I don't know why they didn't use me. So,
Exactly.
I mean, what are we doing? I mean, it's just crazy.
Right. Yeah, but like I get the sense like it's not just a bad writing decision, right? Like that doesn't just happen
That's
where they're
what I
like,
agree.
yeah, we're
I
just
agree
not
with
going to
that.
use him. We're not going to give him anything. He's just going to fall into space and that's it. I really do think a lot of the problems I had with the show are related to that. Not all of them, of course, but I think with what they had, the tools of what they had, and in spite of the issues, we got a pretty cohesive story with some pretty likable, colorful characters. Maybe aside from Yusaku. But we got a good cast of characters, some really interesting duels, despite the issues that this show has been plagued with.
Well, that's what it was. I mean, that was kind of the whole point of that opening scene. It's like, to me, it was just such a miracle almost that like the show was not like unwatchable. Now, for some people, I'm sure they would argue that it was unwatchable, but for a majority of people, it was like a cohesive like story. But yeah, I just think that the production was just at that point, the studio was just in really, really dire straits. And I think it can explain, as you said, a lot of the issues that people have with the show. But the show is what it is at the end of the day. You have to judge it based on what it is. You can't make excuses for it. But yeah.
I mean, yeah, but again, at the end of the day, I think we got a pretty decent show. Even if you even factored out those problems, like let's say we can't take those into consideration because the show ended up being what it was, I would still say I enjoyed watching that show.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people would agree with that.
You just watched one of the clips from my Talking Yu-Gi-Oh show, which airs every other Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you guys so much for your support. Please leave all your thoughts down below. Long live Yu-Gi-Oh, and I hope you have an amazing day. Take care, guys.